Hello from my side as well to this webinar regarding post-quantum cryptography in the automotive industry. First, a couple of words about me. My name is Eva Tijani. I'm working for ESCUT in Berlin since October 2018. I'm mainly working on different consulting and engineering projects regarding automotive security. And since roughly December 2019, I'm also leading at the ESCRIPT side the project Flocky, which relates to post-quantum cryptography, and is funded by the German Ministry of Education. Before that, I did my studies in mathematics and got a doctoral degree in mathematics also in Berlin. So yeah, this is the agenda of today's webinar. We will basically first have a small introduction to kind of get to know all the use cases we kind of care about or will talk about in this webinar. After that, we will have a very short overview of basically what is the quantum threat that is threatening the cryptography, asymmetric cryptography we use nowadays, and also see the alternatives that the cryptographic community has already developed. In the third part of the webinar, we will have a short overview of the related challenges for the automotive industry. So the challenges that arise from the transition to a quantum secure world, and in the end we will have a summary and a short Q&A. So to begin, here in this in this small image, we see an example of communication flows for an average vehicle in the future. So here we see different use cases. For example, vehicles being able to communicate with each other, vehicles being able to communicate with the infrastructure, for example, to get, receive, or send some message related to an incident, a safety-related incident, for example. But also we see communication flows between vehicles and some backend systems for production, in the production or in a workshop, or for example, in order to use some services from the backend of the OEM. So all these use cases represented in this image need to have different security measures in place. Not only a lot of this communication needs to be confidential, but also it needs to be authentic. So, for example, we could all agree that a vehicle would need to be able to control if a software update, for example, that it is receiving from some backend system indeed originates from the backend of the OEM. So it is a legitimate, let's say, a firmware update, or if it is originating by a malicious attacker. On the other hand, for example, we would also like to know and to be able to check that a diagnostic tester, for example, in some repair shop really has the necessary permissions to change something in our vehicle or in our ECU. And the most common way that this authenticity is currently being controlled is with the use of asymmetric cryptography for digital signatures. And in the same time with digital certificates, which basically bind the identity of assigning key to some entity we know and trust. Nowadays, so all the certificates are, of course, in turn part of a bigger chain of trust, also commonly known as a public key infrastructure, or shortly PKI. And nowadays we use for these purposes this so-called classical algorithms, as I will refer to them in this webinar, mainly RSA and CDSA, or elliptical cryptography in general. So these two algorithms, for example, are being based on integer factorization, and on the other hand, on the problem of discrete logarithms on elliptic curves. These algorithms, however, will no longer be secure in the future. And as we can all imagine, this is a problem. And the reason that this happens is because of, this will happen actually, is because of quantum computers. So to give a rather short and imprecise definition, quantum computing basically uses some quantum mechanical phenomena in order to perform efficient computation. Of course, we should note that any problem that a quantum computer, so a physical realization of such a quantum computing system can solve, can also be solved by classical computers, but only given enough time. It is, however, assumed that quantum supremacy or quantum advantage, as it is also called, will be achieved and will be achieved in some years, so not that far in the future. What this means is that it will be possible, that using a quantum computer, we will be able to solve a problem that cannot be solved by a classical computer in a feasible amount of time. And the reason basically we can have this advantage of quantum computing is that we can develop some algorithms that can be designed to take advantage of this quantum mechanical properties, this phenomena, to solve some specific problems. Let's take, for example, the Deutsch-Jozsa problem, one of the first problems that students stumble upon when starting to learn about quantum computing. This problem basically is about determining if a function from n bits to 1 bit is constant or balanced, while we do know for sure that it's one of the two. And basically, for a classical algorithm, in a classical computer, we would need 2 to the n minus 1 plus 1 oracle queries in the worst case to determine this property of the function, whereas there is a quantum algorithm that can be run on a quantum computer, basically shortly described in this short circuit, that would only need 1 oracle query. So, of course, as you can see, this problem is not particularly useful, but it is one really of the first examples of quantum algorithms that are exponentially faster than any possible deterministic classical algorithm. So, of course, this gives you a hint of the things one could achieve with having this technology. The point is, however, and the reason why we have this webinar as well, is that there are also different algorithms that can be run on a quantum computer and a quantum system and can address problems that have to do with cryptography. First, some good news with regards to symmetric cryptography. There we have Grover's algorithm from 1996, which basically improves brute force search algorithms that check for every possible key and only, let's say, provides a quadratic speed up with respect to a classical algorithm to do that. So basically, in a nutshell, the security, in order to achieve the same security, let's say for a symmetric algorithm, let's say of AES, in the future, we would only need to double the parameters that we use. On the other hand, however, with regards to asymmetric cryptography, we do have Shaw's algorithm published in 1994, which unfortunately, or fortunately, as one could wants to see it, let's say, would solve the integer factorization problem and discrete logarithm problems in polynomial time on a quantum computer. So basically, what we get out of this slide is that once we could have a suitable quantum computer, so let's say big enough and with few errors quantum computer, then we would basically be able to solve asymmetric cryptography being used today. Of course, there's a variety of challenges that are associated with the development of a quantum computer, and especially a quantum computer capable of really breaking, for example, the integer factorization problem for big enough primes. But we do see that major companies and universities, companies like IBM, Google, are spending enormous amounts of money and effort into this race of developing a quantum computer. For example, we see here some bits and pieces of news regarding this issue from the last couple of years, where we see that every year, or even after some months, with some months apart, big leaps in this race are being done. For example, we have the latest IBM claim that they will be able to, or they're aspiring to, building a quantum computer with 1,000 qubits by 2023. Whereas the current largest quantum computer that IBM has was about 65 qubits. So of course, a 1,000 qubit machine even would not be enough to fulfill quantum computing full potential, let's say, in order to break the current algorithms we use, but it would be still a great milestone into the development of quantum computing, and at the same time enabling, it will be an enabler to be able to correct the many errors that are plaguing basically the quantum systems that are developed today. So yeah, we saw until now that public key cryptography is really the most critical use case. It is the one for which we do have a quantum algorithm. So once one of these big companies makes such a leap, such advance in their development of a quantum system, that we know that public key cryptography will be broken. The question, however, is, do we need to worry already, or could we just let's say, sit back and wait until one of these companies really develops such a system? Well, the answer to that is that even though the quantum computer threat is a medium-term one, of course it is a real one. We do see that technology companies are really working on this issue with a lot of urgency. And at the same time, we need to keep in mind that preparation is necessary for products that have a long life cycle. For example, one always cites this the famous, in the meantime, theorem of a researcher in quantum computing of Michele Mosca, which basically states that it's the time one needs one's products to be secure, what is here called the security shelf life, plus the time that when an industry needs to migrate all their systems to a quantum secure world, is greater than the time that is needed so that this underlying cryptography will be compromised, then one should already start worrying and preparing. And basically, we can already see that the big organizations, for example, NIST in the USA, BSE in Germany, BSI, sorry, in Germany, have really understood this issue and are already preparing for this step. Most notably, there is a NIST competition, which is currently in its third round and is aiming at standardizing different algorithms for digital signatures and key encapsulation mechanisms. So, as part of this competition, the researchers in cryptography have submitted many different schemes for both use cases, so signatures and key encapsulation. And roughly one could say that these post-quantum algorithms, as they are usually called, can be divided into 5 families roughly, according to the different mathematical problems that they rely on. One of them is hash functions, one we do know already and kind of understand. On the other hand, isogenies of elliptic curves, which basically is another difficult, let's say, problem on elliptic curves. Then some other mathematical objects called lattices, linear codes, and multivariate equations. Exactly, as I said, the competition is currently in its 3rd round, and right now, basically, NIST has chosen a set of algorithms as finalists, which means that this set of algorithms will be widely studied in the next year and possibly standardized after that, while there are some other algorithms that have not yet really been discarded, but they're considered alternate algorithms that can be standardized in the future. Of course, as one can imagine, it is really not an easy work, let's say, to be able to choose among all the submissions that NIST has received in when the first call was made. And basically, it will take a couple of more years for NIST to make its decisions. As we can see in this example table, really different families of algorithms based on all these different problems have really different properties. Some of them enjoy, let's say, high confidence in their security because, for example, they are based on well-studied mathematical objects like hash functions, while others are fairly new and need a lot of more analysis, let's say, about their security. But on the other hand, one has that some of the schemes, some of the families are really efficient, whereas some are not. So basically the landscape, as we will see also a bit later, of the families of post-quantum algorithms is really wide. At the same time, outside of the NIST competition, but still worth mentioning, is also another family, let's say, of algorithms, which are the stateful hash-based algorithms, which with their most famous representative, let's say, being XMSS. So basically, this family of algorithms are not part of the NIST competition right now, but they already actually are on the way to their standardization. So, for example, XMSS is an algorithm which is based on Merkle hash trees, but it is stateful, which means that it is not really suitable for general use. But this scheme has enjoys, let's say, great confidence in its security, and would be, for example, an appropriate candidate for use cases where one could really control the private key, and at the same time, the scheme would be used for a limited amount of signatures. And this is why NIST is also kind of recommending this scheme as a transition solution for industries, of course, where such a stateful scheme really makes sense before the standardization process of them is really finished. So basically, we saw until now what is the current status, what is the problem that will arise in the future, and we saw that different industries with products or with long life cycles need to start preparing already for a transition to a post-quantum world, let's say, or quantum, say, a secure world. In this last part of the webinar, we would now like to discuss what all this means for the automotive industry and what are the challenges that arise by this whole transition, and what would be some possible, let's say, ideas to enable a smooth migration to this post-quantum world. So, of course, one of the first things that any industry should do is find the correct alternatives, the correct algorithms that can be used for their use cases. The first, of course, the most obvious thing to analyze first is have a look at all the submissions, of course, the ones that are currently also being looked at for the round 3 of competition of NIST, and analyze them and compare them with respect, for example, to key and signature sizes, performance of the necessary operation, for example, key generation, signing, verifying, of course, memory consumption during runtime, and last but not least, the security levels they achieve and the confidence in the security of these algorithms that researchers, let's say, have. Of course, one would imagine that this should not be that, let's say, that hard to do, since we have a limited amount of data to compare. However, this comparison and this choice of one algorithm, let's say, to fit all use cases is not as straightforward as one would imagine, since the different submissions have really different profiles, and this really makes the choice of one algorithm to fit them all really hard. For example, we can see here in this sample example diagram, which compares the key and signature sizes for the finalists and alternate algorithms of the NIST round 3. We see here that there are, for example, some algorithms, or one algorithm that has provides or needs a very, very small secret key, while at the same time produces a huge public key and a relatively small, let's say, signature. So, for example, this algorithm would seem to us as very, very suitable, very nice for use cases when we are most concerned about storing, for example, many secret keys on some limited memory of how the security model, whereas it would, in the same time, make our certificates very, very big. On the other hand, there are some algorithms that really have the exact opposite profile. They need huge keys, secret keys and public keys, but the signatures are really small. So this, for example, would be a good choice if we really do not care about storing the secret keys and so on, but we do care about the signature, so that how big the signature is that we produce, for different reasons, because of the protocol, for example, we use to send some signed data on. And on the other hand, you can see also here, for example, there are some algorithms that are fairly stable with respect to this size. So basically, in a nutshell, what the message of the last slide is that it is very important to make this choice of an algorithm for an industry, or let's say, for example, here in the for the automotive industry, according to the relevant use case that one needs or wants to secure in this first, or let's say at all. For example, we have to analyze if the most important thing we care about is, let's say, end-to-end latency of the communication that send over signed data or certificates, or if it's more important, for example, to keep the sizes, the amount of things we need to store in a secure memory as small as possible. And to do that, afterwards, so in order to choose a correct algorithm for that, of course, we need to then analyze the resources, the available hardware resources of a typical target for our industry. So basically, OEMs first need to identify which functions and use cases, and in its case, use asymmetric cryptography, of course, and then prioritize them. So analyze which of these use cases are the most probable to be attacked first because of some business needs or other, and kind of think about how to tackle these use cases first. At the same time, something that one should not at all forget is that one also needs to analyze what kind of protocols are used for those use cases and see how this could be affected by the migration to post-quantum algorithms. For example, from the fact that now the certificates or signature signed data that need to be transferred are way bigger than the classical, so what is happening today, let's say. But apart from finding the correct algorithms for different use cases, or if one is lucky really finding one algorithm that would fit most of the use cases in some industry, it is at the same time very important to consider different things, such as, for example, and in my opinion, one of the most important ones, how to enable a smooth transition to quantum secure systems. For example, how to allow, as an idea, a flexible and secure algorithm selection for my targets. As we said before, it's important to consider how and if one needs to adapt the protocols that are in use in these cases. And of course, restructure the respective PKIs, so the respective infrastructure handling this certificates and planning how to migrate to new ones. And of course, that's also, but not least, how to redesign key and certificate management to can reflect the needs of post-quantum algorithms. So in my opinion, in order to enable this smooth transition, the OEMs would then need to use tools that are already in place, possibly build upon them as well, in order to avoid disruptive scenarios, for example, as in the worst case, having asymmetric cryptography suddenly broken and being completely unprepared for that. So, for example, in this worst case that suddenly asymmetric cryptography is broken tomorrow and we do not yet have, let's say, our systems prepared for that, there are still tools that OEMs can use to prevent, for example, the bad scenario of malicious firmware updates to the target ECUs that are already in the field. Namely, of course, use certificate revocation and possibly use symmetric keys that are already present in different ECUs known to the OEM, and use those symmetric keys, for example, to establish a secure communication with pre-shared keys with the backend, trigger firmware updates that would possibly even either allow the ECUs to use other algorithms, new algorithms, or kind of close the possibilities of an attacker being able to use this now breakable signatures to send, for example, firmware updates to the ECU. Of course, for all this, it is very important that this alternative dimension solutions and these tools are already in place and prepared for that. And of course, in the best case, in the best scenario, that it would be great if the cryptographic agility, as of course everybody states nowadays, is really extended to the point that this flexible and algorithm selection, for example, and at the same time the secure algorithm selection is possible for such use cases. Of course, the best option and the most probable option is that OEMs would then have enough time to prepare, and a goal for them would be then to try to become quantum secure by design. And in order to do that, one could follow some, let's say, simple initial steps. First, focusing on central big ECUs, for example, like gateways or some connectivity ECUs, and make them post-quantum crypto-enabled at first. Of course, why would we do that is because this central ECUs usually handle most of the communication with the outside world, are the ones that currently host functions which use actually asymmetric cryptography, and at the same time usually, let's say, have less resource constraints than smaller ECUs. At the same time, one should focus also on creating and migrating to a new infrastructure. In this case, for example, an infrastructure handling post-quantum certificates or post-quantum PKI. And of course, do not forget that in this scenario where we have enough time to prepare, we still can use classical certificates to secure use cases for ECUs, let's say, with not enough resources to handle post-quantum cryptography, and even to enabling them, for example, to migrate to some other symmetric, for example, based solutions. Of course, for that, one should not forget that this redesigning of the respective PKIs is really important, and the migration of the old PK to the new PK is something that needs to be prepared and carefully thought upon. And at the same time, it is very important to already start planning for and reserving necessary resources in the target ECUs, let's say, with respect, for example, to available memory or to available memory at runtime, or enough memory in the hardware security module, already at a very early design phase of, for example, this central ECUs, because we all know that kind of ECUs that will be in the field in some, let's say, more than 5 years are already being designed right now. So with respect to this infrastructure, this public key infrastructure, as I said, it is of utter importance to plan this migration to a quantum secure solution as let's say, early as possible, and at the same time without forgetting this old or smaller ECUs already in the field that cannot or could not ever handle post-quantum algorithms. So that there are kind of at least two different possible solutions or designs for a PKI. The first would be to operate a parallel PKI, which means that the OEM would have a PKI able to issue different certificates in parallel. First, some certificate chain of trust with only classical algorithms for this classic or smaller ECUs, and at the same time being able to issue pure post-quantum certificates for this new post-quantum enabled target. Another option is to operate a hybrid PKI. This basically means that our infrastructure is issuing certificates which at the same time have a classical and a post-quantum signature on them, and it is up to the target to decide, let's say, which of the two it can verify. So if an ECU in the field is currently post-quantum crypto enabled, it would then verify both signatures actually, at least, and then a classical and older ECU would never be able to use a post-quantum signature, but it would still be able to communicate using, for example, the classical, the RSA keys. So such a hybrid PKI indeed is really offers a flexible solution and would really enable a smooth transition for all the ECUs as well. And at the same time, it is a PKE well started, so hybrid certificates are already in the way of standardization, and research is really active in this field as well. So, for example, hybrid key exchange has already been incorporated to protocols like TLS. Many experimental results are already available, while one should say that more experimental results would really be needed for targets that are closer, let's say, to automotive targets. At the same time, as I kind of mentioned in the second part of the webinar, it would also be an option to first choose some conservative transition solution with respect to algorithms, for example, XMSS or some other kind of well-started scheme, in order to kind of start preparing already and making some targets in the field already post-quantum crypto enabled. So yeah, that was it basically for the main content of the webinar. As a summary, let's say we at Script also kind of understood the challenges and the issues that can arise for the automotive industry by the future development of quantum computers. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we are already working on a funded project which focuses on developing quantum computer resistant public key infrastructure as a part of a research project called Floki. And in this project, we are working with our partners from industry and research in order to design a PKE not only supporting both, let's say, older use cases, older targets and post-quantum enabled targets, but at the same time being suitable for more than one industry. For example, automotive industry, financial sector, e-governance, and industry 4.0 are the examples that the industries that are involved in this project. And kind of departing from that, we are also developing our services with respect to consulting automotive customers in order to be able to tackle all these challenges that are arising from quantum computing, first by understanding them and then by helping them to basically develop alternative solutions. Yeah, so that was it for me.